Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
All right, we're back. It's the Casa de Cavazos. Justin in Chicago, Ada in Harlingen, Texas, Nathan in Weslaco, providing that Tejano connection to reality. How's it going? What's up?
It's going good. We're still shocked. The Luka trade. Like, I don't know if I've been that shocked in a long time.
Hey, what time did this trade actually go down? Because I was actually asleep and I got woken up by a phone call and I was like, what the fuck just happened?
It was pretty late at night. And people thought it was a hack. Like, Shams got hacked or something. And then it turned out it was true, which is crazy. And people still can't believe it. This trade doesn't make any sense at all.
As far as what?
It just doesn't make sense at all. Like, 25-year-old superstar that took them to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't ask for a trade. You're alleging that he had conditioning issues and you were worried about his diet and his health. And that's the reason you traded him. It makes no sense.
I don't know. 270 is pretty heavy for a point guard.
But he hasn't had like Zion issues where he's like constantly gone and not able to get you through the playoffs. He got you to the finals.
But I mean, he's been pretty banged up like every postseason. It always feels like he's just like one or two plays away from like maybe missing the next game.
Also, doesn't make sense that you traded him for AD. I'm pretty sure you could have gotten someone better.
Okay, so this is a good time to talk about what was involved in the trade.
Okay.
So LA gets Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris. Dallas gets Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. And to make all of this happen, Utah also gets Jalen Hood-Schifino and two 2025 second-rounders. Luka's like not even 26.
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense.
And how old is AD now?
I believe he's 31. Yeah.
And AD is someone who's also struggled with injuries in his life too. I mean, yeah, sure, he has a championship. Sure, he is a strong defensive player, but I don't know. I don't know if even the roster as currently constructed, I don't know if they get to the finals like last year.
Well, and then people also mentioned that if you had shopped around Luka, you would have gotten a better package. You probably would have gotten a younger star and probably a lot more picks.
A younger star like who?
Well, they tried to get Giannis, which didn't work.
Oh, you mean not younger than Luka, just younger than AD?
Yeah, younger than AD.
I mean, there's only a handful of players you actually make this deal for, but I don't think anybody that has these players would give them up. That list is Wembanyama. Spurs are not going to say yes. You got Nikola Jokic, not going to say yes. And Giannis. That was the list. That's it. If you don't get those three, AD is the only logical choice here.
So you agree with this trade?
For who?
I mean, for what the Mavs are trying to do, yeah.
What are they trying to do?
Trying to win now.
With Mr. Glass?
He's played more games than Luka this season.
Ooh, that's a good point there. They still have a bunch of guys on that team. It sounds like they really do want to be more defensively minded there. And in all of this, AD kind of gets what he wants. He was saying not too long ago that he missed playing the 4, that he wanted to roam around a little bit more and not necessarily be parked in as the 5. And LA's roster construction didn't allow him to do that. So in a way, he's getting what he wants. You got Daniel Gafford. You got Derek Lively.
Do you agree with the assessment by ESPN that this trade was an F for Dallas and an A for LA Lakers?
I mean, it's an A for the Lakers, but I definitely do not think it is an F for the Mavs.
Is it an A for the Lakers?
I mean, assuming that he stays healthy, you got a superstar in his prime, so that's an automatic A.
Yeah, but the defense is going to be horrible.
Yeah, but that also assumes that they're done. I don't think we still got a couple more days.
Well, also, this trade is not being graded for this year. It's being graded for the future because nobody expects them to compete for a title unless they add something else significant.
There is also some talk that maybe after this, they were going to trade LeBron. But I think that's kind of quieted down, that talk.
And the other thing is the Mavs are already one of the best defensive teams. So now they just get even better.
But you lose Luka, who's a freaking amazing superstar offensively.
Yeah, I wonder if Nico Harrison was watching what was happening not too far away in Houston and seeing that kind of like defense-oriented team basketball. He kind of wants to get in on some of that. I mean, Houston is second in the West. Maybe he wanted to do something similar.
There's also an argument that he has been watching the Dallas team without Luka and that it looks pretty good without him. And so he wasn't that vital. and that AD could step in there.
Are they like 500 without him this year?
I think they're under.
Well, Kyrie's been out a lot too.
Yeah, Kyrie has a back issue right now, but I mean, AD slides in. That's an automatic 25 a game, maybe more, because I think he actually becomes the number one option on offense for Dallas now, which I think's kind of why. I mean, makes sense the Lakers let him go anyway. I mean, they should have been playing through him. They're still playing through LeBron. It's going to be an interesting fit with Luka, I think. Well, then you got Reeves too. So who's actually going to initiate offense here? It's my question.
I was hearing that Reeves was probably going to come off the bench.
Okay, so who slides into the starting lineup?
I think they still need to find a center. The word around the street is possibly trying to pick up someone like Nick Claxton, the Time Lord, Robert Williams.
Yeah, talk is they're looking for somebody that can do a lot of lobs because Luka loved that. You saw last year all the lobs with Lively and Gafford, so going to try to recreate that a little bit.
So who else they got? They got Hachimura at the 4. They're probably going to keep on starting him.
He did great against Jokic. I remember they found something in the playoffs a couple of years ago. Remember that?
You mean you're joking? I still think that Dallas really did something wrong here, both to Luka and their fans.
There was that whole protest outside of the American Airlines Center.
The fans are distraught. They really love Luka. And Luka himself didn't want to leave. Even his dad is complaining and stating that this was wrong. I know.
Maybe they just got tired of all the complaining. I mean, last year, like, he was just like whining, falling out of games, not trying. I mean, you're trying to win a championship. I mean, sure, you got to the finals, but when it came down to it, like, he'd make some really boneheaded plays. And their defense definitely wasn't going to do it for them.
Well, he has a partner in whining, a partner in complaining with LeBron.
You mean the new partner?
Yeah.
That's going to be all-time flops now.
I mean, the only thing that's really being said by the executives right now is if you're the Mavs, you better be right that he's not going to be able to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you really made a bad decision.
They would really have to know something that we don't.
I don't think they do. I think it's just the alleged lack of conditioning and lack of taking care of his body.
Yeah. A lot of people are calling out that new owner syndrome, that whenever like a new ownership group takes over, they want to make some moves. You saw with Matt Ishbia over there in Phoenix. You're seeing it with Houston. They've retooled the roster, and they've done a good job of it so far. They've made some swings. They got Kyrie. But, man, like, missing on Brunson and letting Doncic go like that.
Well, you got to remember, they also had Porzingis, so they could have had all three of those guys.
Jesus Christ.
Did you see the Nico Harris and Jason Kidd press conference?
No.
Jason Kidd's face was extremely upset. Like, he did not look happy.
You don't think he was cool with it?
No. Like, look at that video. He looked not happy. Like, he was just going along with the press conference, but he didn't want this.
You think you would want to have your coach on board with this too?
It sounds like it was a very unilateral decision. And Mark Cuban didn't even know about it, although he's now a minority owner.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Apparently, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that are going around. One of the biggest ones right now is that there are quite a few owners who want to get a team in Las Vegas. So the idea of this conspiracy is that they wanted to alienate the Dallas fans so that they would start not going to Mavs games, and then the ownership group would be like, like maybe we should move this team to Vegas.
That's interesting. It's possible.
Conspiracy.
I don't think so, because the actual talk has always been about expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you bring in Vegas, you bring back Seattle. What about LeBron's influence on this? What have you all heard?
I've heard nothing. Have you?
Actually, I was watching ESPN today, and there was a report even from last year that LeBron was kind of disappointed with the way things are going, that it wasn't really working with AD anymore. There's some talk. Some people don't really believe that he didn't know.
Because he's usually the franchise manipulator and usually manipulating the other players. It would be weird for him not to have done something behind the scenes.
And people say that he's wanted to play with Luka forever. So, I mean, if everybody knew that, I mean, sure, the management knew as well. So as soon as the Mavs called him, trade was done, I imagine.
But it's also weird, like, how it went down, how Dallas didn't really look to shop him around. We're only hearing about two teams, right? That they called LA and they called Milwaukee.
Well, even Milwaukee's like people are just assuming because like nobody actually knows what the secret team is. And some people are even saying that that's not even true either. That they only called the Lakers.
That's very strange just to call the Lakers.
Yeah.
That makes it seem like there's some LeBron shenanigans.
Collusion. It sounds like
I mean,
collusion.
It's still not going to help LeBron win the championship, honestly.
Well, the other thing is the Lakers actually gave up a pretty important piece. So Max Christie's not really just a throw-in. He's a really good up-and-coming 3-and-D player. It just depends how you see AD. If AD comes back playing the way he has been playing, I mean, he's not Luka, but I mean, he's definitely, when he's playing the way he is, he's like a at least top 8 player in the league.
Yeah.
Because like I said, they get AD and Max Christie.
So then they just kind of live in that 2020 mindset where you have your key, very, very expensive pieces and you just like gut your roster of future people. I mean, I guess like Luka is the future, but they would probably need to restart things again as soon as LeBron is out.
Yeah, well, you're trying to win with LeBron now, so you might have to do that anyway, which is what usually happens with those teams. The idea also is that you already have a built-in superstar once LeBron decides to retire. And then at that point, you can really start to reload.
Will really be genius for LeBron's legacy is if you're to go get traded to Golden State and play with Steph, because then for sure Steph could not pass him in titles.
Well, that was already the rumor that if LeBron gets traded next, he's going to Golden State.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why they're reporting like, oh, he's going to stay now. Like the second it was Luka, he's always wanted to play with him. He's always admired him. So there's no question in my mind that he was going to stay. He definitely wants to play with this guy. Well, I think this year, as long as AD's healthy and Kyrie can get over his back issues, I think the Mavs have a higher ceiling for this season at least.
You think the Mavs will go up in the standings after this?
Yeah, I think they'll make a move. Like I said, assuming that Kyrie can get over his back issues, because I think he has like a bulging disc right now. But if he can get back to 100% health and you have AD coming off that abdominal strain, you're going to be really stacked defensively. And you still should be pretty good offensively because, I mean, they dropped offensively without Luka, but you had nobody to fill in that void. And AD's going to bring those 25-plus points right back.
Both Kobe and Tim Duncan had periods of time where they were considering moving to other teams or wanting to be on the trade block. Do you think that if either of those deals would have happened, that this would have been of similar magnitude?
No, because like there was already talk. Apparently, like Tim Duncan was really close to signing with Orlando.
Yeah, what's so bizarre about this is Luka didn't want to leave.
I mean, I've heard two things really. It's either you think he's going to get hurt or you had already kind of been told that he was not going to re-sign. And if he told you he was not going to re-sign, this was the perfect time to trade him. Because after next year, you already know what happens when they know you're not going to re-sign. You're not going to get a single good offer because they can get him for free in the offseason.
My theory is he was going to resign, but he was going to be very expensive for them, and they're supposedly worried about his conditioning and health. I mean, when he writes a note stating that he wanted to win them a championship, he loved it there, I don't think there was an issue about him not wanting to resign.
I don't know. Maybe he's just going to age out faster. He's been a professional for a really long time.
A lot of those European guys have been professionals for a long time, right? Like they start playing pro sometimes when they're 14.
Yeah, I don't think Cuban would have ever done this.
Why did Cuban sell most of his stake? He was definitely a better owner.
Didn't Nico Harrison make some other questionable moves in the past? Oh, it's because people are talking about he was the one I think that botched the Nike presentation.
What's that story?
Let me find it here. I think it's one of the, I think it was Steph. The presentation they used for him was actually for KD.
Oh.
That was Nico Harrison.
So that's going to be two major misses if this doesn't work out right for Dallas. Possibly the most impactful misses of all time.
So he was around during that Brunson saga?
Yeah, didn't they go pretty far with Brunson and Luka also, and then he just didn't re-sign him?
So Brunson's contract was in 2022, and Dallas didn't want to pay him.
Yeah, what are you doing if you're losing these mega stars?
You're losing these MVP candidates.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he's trying to be a GM like an NFL GM. Like, if I don't win right now, just get rid of this guy, move on to the next.
I'm not sure if it works the same way in basketball.
But they were right there.
Probably not, but I mean, were they really right there? I mean, there was a couple of plays where OKC maybe takes them down. I don't feel like they were a slam dunk to return to the finals. As a matter of fact, even with Luka, I still think OKC is the one's going to go to the finals from the West this year.
Yeah, but what about the Lakers?
With Luka, they're probably going to be still 5 or 6 because their defense was already 21st with AD. So what happens now?
Plus, San Antonio will be knocking on the door, too. They could be in the running for something a little bit more exciting.
Now with like De'Aaron Fox, you kind of got what you would have got from CP3 like 10 years ago, that type of player. So now we might see a lot more of those lobs.
Yeah, so that Spurs trade is a 3-teamer, which is also bizarre because the last time that there was some movement around the Spurs, it was another 3-teamer involving the Kings and the Bulls again. Like, why is this a threesome that continues to benefit the Spurs and produce questionable moves for the other teams? So this time around, the Spurs get De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin from Sacramento. Kings get Zach LaVine from Chicago and a bunch of picks.
I think it's actually a good trade for all three of these teams.
Yeah. And the Bulls get Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and a 2025 first-round pick.
Yeah, so like in the Spurs, you don't give up your core guys. Get a guy that's pretty close to being a superstar, who's shown he's not scared of the moment when in his one postseason appearance. Bulls finally unload Zach LaVine, which they've been trying to do for years.
Mm-hmm.
And Zach LaVine has already played with DeMar DeRozan, and they've meshed really well together. So they might actually be even better without De'Aaron Fox, surprisingly.
Yeah, plus they have a much better big man in that combo. It's basically you're swapping out that trio of Vooch, DeRozan, and LaVine with Sabonis in there.
And I'm hearing that the Bulls might be making some more moves anyway. They might be moving on from some players. You might see Lonzo Ball go on the move as well. So maybe the Bulls are just fully embracing a rebuild at this point. I think that all three of these teams came out right where they needed to be. Nobody got screwed, in my opinion.
And regarding Fox, they were saying that he very specifically wanted to go to San Antonio. And
You never
I
hear
think
that.
well, apparently a lot of players are wanting to play with Wemby. So they were starting to think that he was just going to leave whenever his contract was up and go to San Antonio.
Mhm.
I think it also helped that he was already like in a relatively small market in Sacramento, so it's an
Yeah.
easy move for him.
No state income tax.
That always helps.
That roster's pretty nice. I mean, they have a lot of young guys who are willing to put in the effort on defense.
The Bulls?
No. The Spurs.
They have a nice group of young guys. They have size. They have some good offense. So maybe if they keep them together for 3 years or so, we'll get a championship.
Chris Paul could probably make more of an impact coming off the bench and on a reduced minutes load.
Is he projected to move to the bench? De'Aaron can play point guard, but I mean, that's not his natural position as far as I know. Some people were saying that CP3 was still going to be in the starting lineup, so I
Mhm.
found that kind of weird. So I'm not a Spurs fan. You guys would know more than me. What's the projected lineup now?
I mean, if you stick to traditional positions, De'Aaron Fox would be the starter.
Wemby's, obviously.
Yeah. Sohan would be in that power forward position at 4.
Then Castle and Vassell.
Yeah, or maybe Harrison Barnes. There are a lot of options.
Okay, so the projected starting lineup is De'Aaron Fox, Castle, Vassell, Barnes, and Wembanyama.
Okay, I just got a update from
What?
Chris Mannix. The Warriors are indeed serious about reuniting with KD.
Okay. How would that happen?
So they're trying to see if they can get a deal with Phoenix. Golden State, possibly get KD back.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously that's how they would do it, but what would they give? What would they give up?
I don't know. They just said that they're serious about reuniting.
Is there mutual interest or just the Warriors are serious about possibly acquiring him?
It just says that they're serious about reuniting because the Jimmy Butler deal failed.
Okay, so if that happens, what happens to Jimmy Butler? Does he just stay in Miami and just like screw everything up all season?
Aren't they just going to get rid of him?
They're not going to buy him out, I don't think.
That would be
You
too much
remember the
money.
stories when he was in Minnesota? Like he literally just like got with the second team and then like they smoked the starters and just talk shit.
Yeah. There's a clip of Jeff Teague on his podcast talking about being there, and the starters wanted to rematch, but then Jimmy was like, "No, I'm out." And then he like left. But also he had cut out the Timberwolves logo on his practice jersey. He left practice right after whipping the starters. So then they end up finishing up practice, and then when they're in the locker room, like the TVs are on ESPN, Jimmy Butler's live having an interview. He went home
What
to go
if-
do that.
What if what happens is he acts so bad that they cut him, then Lakers buy him out?
I don't
I
think
mean,
that he would
somebody's
do
going
that.
to trade for him because I mean I don't think he's going to play, and if he does, he's just going to be a distraction. So I don't know how they get rid of him at this point.
Isn't he like hurting his trade value though?
Yeah, I mean that's usually what happens when you demand that trade.
Oh, maybe he'll go to Phoenix or something. I don't know.
Allegedly, that's his preferred destination. But I mean, if KD leaves, how much does he actually want to be there?
Probably not at all.
That team already has serious cap implications for years to come.
What about Dallas?
What's the package, though?
I don't know. I feel like they'd have to move off one of their younger guys.
I saw something that Lively's actually hurt and might not play the rest of this season, so he might be a player people can include
Mhm.
in a trade because they know he'll be back next year anyway.
They do like
They already
him a
have
lot, though,
Gafford and they have AD.
if they're going to really, really win now. Lively might be a nice piece for the Heat moving forward. Get the team younger. But we'll see. Like, there's still 3 more days left to this trade deadline. We don't know what the hell's going to happen after this. Is that all you have to say on the trades and the NBA?
It's so stressful. We got to talk about stress.
Then we're going to talk about the Clippers trade.
You want to talk about the Clippers trade?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, go ahead.
What? I just got to talk about it by myself.
I don't know anything about it. I've not even been following that team.
Okay, so they had PJ Tucker, right? And
Yes.
they haven't been using him for probably the last 2 years, so they finally moved him. Mo Bamba had been a decent piece, but they moved on. They got Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills from the Jazz.
That's kind of a big trade in terms of their depth. I mean, they got like a solid big to play some minutes behind Zubats. Patty Mills is a solid 3-point shooter and a good rotation guy, even if he's older.
But the talk is also that they cleared up some money, so possibly to make one more trade.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about anything that they're doing.
I just don't know who else they'd be targeting at this point.
Maybe they want Paul George back. I don't know. Well, Kawhi's been looking really good since he came back too.
I mean, he always looks good. It's just a matter of keeping that inflammation down. So, Clipper fan, that's all you ever worry about. Whenever the game's over, you don't want to hear anything about his knee.
You already heard my assessment on him. Just retire Kawhi. Stephen A said that like 2 years ago.
Yeah, but Stephen A also said that he couldn't even walk. And he also said that about Lonzo Ball. So, come on, Stephen A. You can do better than that.
This is all going to be super outdated by the time the pod comes out. I just know it. There's going to be some crazy stuff that happens.
That's why I also put like a date recorded.
It's got to be released quick, unedited.
Just sitting here, we hear the sounds of you like sipping your drink.
The
with the
clinking
ice.
of the ice.
Yes, I'm enjoying a beverage from Scotland.
Ada, I know you wanted to talk about mental health in the U.S. Do you want to share the reason why you wanted to talk about that?
Because obviously these trades are so stressful. We got to talk about mental health.
That's why I'm medicating with alcohol right now.
I just have seen a lot of mental health patients the last few years, and I'm trying to figure out how to raise a child in such a way that she doesn't become over medicated herself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think some of this is interesting. There was an article in Vice on January 28th that was named, "We're all over medicated. Your anxiety disorder is probably just stress," and talked about how recent research is showing that a majority of doctors believe normal reactions to external stressors are now being wrongly diagnosed as different mental health issues. Derek Thompson had also recently written and spoken about this, talking about how there's a lot of overdiagnosis and people are looking at social media, TikTok, and there's a lot of talk about anxiety and other mental health diagnoses, and people are thinking that normal things are mental health issues.
So do you think there's actually more mental health issues now, or do you think it's just being overdiagnosed?
So I think we have to be very careful. It's a really complex topic. There's definitely people who have very real depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, other conditions like that. But I also noticed, I did a lot of mental health telemedicine. There are also a lot of people who appear to be having issues with coping skills.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to be medicated and diagnosed for things that I thought were normal stressors. If your dog dies, of course, it's going to be terrible. You're going to feel bad. But it goes away, that feeling, after some time period, and you don't necessarily need to be medicated. Or, they're going to have a stressful test. So they're like, oh, I need medication for this. Or, oh, I lost my job. I need medication for this. Oh, my car broke down. I need medication for this. So that didn't make sense to me. It's like, these things do suck. That's life. We're going to have things that happen to us and we're going to feel bad. But it goes away at some point that you don't necessarily need medication for it. So, I mean, that was a tough thing for me because obviously I'm not going to say that and I'm going to go ahead and treat the patient. But it was like a weird tension in my brain, like, wait, these things seem like they're normal things. Like these things are going to happen to us in life, and it's gonna be sad, or it's gonna be anxiety provoking.
And this is all for adults, correct? On the telemed side of it?
Yes, I was only seeing 18 and above, but I think that these issues develop when you're younger in a lot of people.
I wonder if a lot of this has to do with just being poorly socialized, just spending so much time on social media, not learning to cope. I think this ties back into that older conversation about loneliness. I think when we're feeling lonelier, we dive into these social media worlds, we create these parasocial relationships. We might learn a lot more about diagnoses that we don't have, and just knowing a lot of people who even just searching on WebMD, not even just mental health, physical health.
Yeah.
It's so easy to see a handful of symptoms and say, oh, I think I have that, and have that kind of worry and that kind of anxiety.
Yeah.
Along with that, because folks are lonelier, they might not have the support systems that they might have had a couple decades ago in order to better cope with the stresses of daily life.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that what happened is we were trying to destigmatize mental health issues, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah, it's important.
You know, we still see a lot of stigma around it. Like we've heard it from our own family members. Like, oh, depression's not real. Just go walk outside or go get a job. We've heard it from the right wing recently. Like, oh, if you work a lot, you won't have time to be depressed. So obviously that doesn't make sense. Like there are people who have true depression. Doesn't matter what their situation is. You can't just walk it off or work it off. But at the same time, now we've gotten to a point where it's so destigmatized that people are thinking normal feelings are pathological.
Yeah.
So what happens if you stay on these meds long term?
I mean, I think with some of these things, we don't really know. Like, we probably don't have studies on if you take Lexapro for 40 straight years. We don't know if that causes some dementia or some other issue. We don't know at this point.
So let's say, what's like a regular prescription for, like, let's say depression?
It would be an SSRI, like Lexapro, Zoloft, Prozac. Those are the common ones.
So then these people, when they get depressed, they kind of depend on that already? Like they're able to take that medication and they think they're okay?
Yeah, well, to some extent. A lot of times what would happen is they would be on medication, and then whenever they had an acute stressor, they'd want their dose increased or to add a second medication. Sometimes even a third medication.
Well, isn't therapy part of these treatment plans too?
Well, the thing is that therapy is not very accessible for a lot of people. It's expensive. Sometimes it's a lot cheaper just to get a prescription.
So you're never actually dealing with the issue. You're just throwing medication, feeling better for a little bit, potentially, and then just repeating that cycle.
Well, I think that's what psychiatry has become. Like, they're not really teaching psychiatrists anymore how to do extensive therapy. They're basically teaching them how to prescribe medications.
Mm.
So what I'm doing is I'm trying to use my experiences, and I'm trying to kind of use it on my own kid. And obviously this is not based on any research. And I think it also helps that I'm a medical professional, so I'm able to do it a little better than maybe someone who doesn't have medical knowledge. But I'm trying to work on her coping skills with her because I see these issues in people.
Yeah.
So like if she tells me she's stressed out about a test, I'm like, well, that's normal. It's normal to feel stress. Like, it's normal to feel some stress, some anxiety about that. It's not like an abnormal thing. It's just normal things that happen to us. And so anything where she's going to feel stressed out and she tells me about it, I'm like, that's normal. Like, that's, and I'm not like downplaying it. I'm just telling her like, yeah, it's normal. You kind of work through it. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's just a normal response your body's having because you know something's going to happen that is stressful.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, there's a performative romanticizing of mental health issues on social media. Like, yes, we're supposed to talk about it. People do have these issues, but sometimes I feel like they are social signifiers for some folks. I've seen people on social media. I've even heard people write whole songs where the whole idea is, oh, like, here's my depression and this is like how it makes me feel. It makes me feel like running into traffic and doing X, Y, or Z thing. And it's like a super big song. But in that genre of performance, there's very little accountability of like, I realize I have a problem. Here is the help that I need to go and get. And that's not a part of the conversation that a lot of these people are having. And on top of that, a lot of people are self-diagnosing, not just mental health issues, but autism. Like, sure, like we're learning more about autism and there is a spectrum, but there are so many people who claim some sort of neurodivergence. And I was talking to a friend about this too, who works as a photographer, and he had someone that he started working with, a younger person, say my neurodivergence doesn't allow me to do X, Y, or Z task. But it's one of those things where instead of actually learning to do the job, they've already said like, oh, I'm this kind of autistic, therefore I can't do these tasks. None of us know how to do any of this stuff when we go in. So it's on us to learn it, and we all have our different ways of learning it.
And I think that was mentioned in the Derek Thompson article, that some people are kind of making these diagnoses part of their identity.
And have either one of you dealt with any mental health issues?
I think I've had situational depression and I've had grief, but I don't think I've had anything that I would consider so severe that I would need medication.
Yeah, I've had some periods of intense grief, and going to things like weekly therapy helped me talk through things to better cope with them. I do think that I probably have some chemical imbalances that lead to some deeper depressive ruts, but I have not gotten those diagnosed. But I'm not going to go as far as saying like I'm a depressed person. That is my identity. That's not who I am.
So no medications by either of you to address these issues?
For me, it's only been situational, very like short-lived. I'm not sure what the DSM criteria are right now, but when I was in med school, for example, like if you have a grief reaction, that's pretty normal and it's not pathologic till maybe like 6 months or so. If you're still like crying constantly and in bed constantly after 6 months or so, then that would be pathologic after a grief situation.
Well, I'm guessing like with my older daughter, how you were talking about yours, that you just tell her like to get over things.
Well, I don't say get over it. That's not the right way.
I didn't really mean like just get over it, but I mean like that there's a way, you're going to feel a certain way. So like with my oldest daughter, she had a lot of problems in school initially. And of course, they wanted her to see a therapist and all these things. And I think right away they asked us if they wanted her if they could prescribe something for her. And we said no right off the bat because we kind of just felt it was like a kid, just growing pains. And sure enough, she snapped out of it. But it's one of those things too where like I feel like other people, like they just, as soon as they hear something, oh, my kid has, let's say, ADHD or whatever, like they just take the meds right away. Like they don't stop to think like, you know what, maybe we can work through this.
Mm-hmm.
Like versus with both my kids, I tell them like, it's okay. Like if you do bad at something, you're probably going to feel bad. You're going to feel disappointed in yourself.
Yeah.
Like things happen. Like I still make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And I don't understand how we got to the point where just because your kid doesn't listen to you for a little bit that they need medications.
I think I've also learned a lot through telemedicine. People in the United States seem to want to be medicated. Like they like medications. They want to be on 3 medications for the anxiety and depression. It's weird. Like I don't know why I didn't grow up that way and why I don't feel that way, but I have noticed that a lot of Americans like prescriptions to fix everything.
Not to mention all the people who self-medicate with weed and alcohol.
That's true. Yeah, but I mean, it is tough because obviously if I feel like my kid is really having pathological anxiety or depression, then I need to recognize that. But like anxiety situations related to acute stressors, like I try to just tell her like it's something that happens to us. Like it's a fairly normal feeling. More recently, she had to deal with the grief of losing a dog when we lost that little puppy, Oreo.
Mm-hmm.
And she obviously felt horrible. So we talked about that. Like, you know, this is what happens when you lose someone that you love. Like the harder you love, the more it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
That's life. You know, it's tough. And so then we even talked about like, do you want to get another dog? Because it's highly likely that it's going to happen again. Like you're probably going to outlive the dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have to go through that again at some point. And she's like, yes, I understand. I want another dog. So we talk about stuff like that. But I feel that Justin has had some real depression.
What? Why?
Like just in talking to you at some certain points, certain things you've told me, I feel like it's more than just situational at times with you.
I have like these cyclical spells sometimes, and I'm aware that they're cyclical. And I feel like being a freelancer and not having a strictly structured job can kind of affect that too. So I go on these sprints of working really hard for a couple of weeks or even like a period of months, depending on like what projects are lined up. And then if I'm between things or have time to work on some other stuff before I get more projects in, I might find myself struggling to get out of bed for like a week. But
Yeah.
usually I'll tell myself that I know that is followed by a period of hyper productivity. So I'll have some consolation in knowing that it will end at some point. But also realizing this is not normal to
Yeah.
not feel like you want to get out of the house or do anything other than just like stare at the wall or at the phone or at the
Yeah.
TV.
Well, I don't want people like Justin or other people to think that they should never be medicated. So that's the difficulty with this situation,
Are
right?
you saying that I should be medicated?
Well, I don't know. I mean, some of what you're describing sounds like more than what I would consider just normal depression symptoms or normal anxiety symptoms that are related to acute stressors. So that's the complexity in it, right? Because I think when people already have lost their coping skills, like the cat's out of the bag. Like, what am I going to do as far as telling them they don't need medication? Like, I don't think I can really do much at that point.
Yeah.
And I just have to give them medication if that's what they feel they need to get better.
Yeah, well, imagine how much worse I would be if I hadn't developed some coping skills.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true.
If I tell you about certain symptoms that I have now, if I wasn't able to cope, then I'd probably be done already.
Well, it's a complex issue. So I'm trying to work on it at a kid level, trying to talk about it early so that she understands certain things are normal. But at the same time, like, she talks to me quite a bit. So I feel like if I thought some of it was pathologic, I would do something about it. Probably start with therapy.
Just talk therapy.
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
It's tough. It's tough because, like I said, you don't want to have people feel stigmatized and not seek the proper care. But at the same time, like, now we have people who are like just not having coping skills regarding normal life. Like, oh, I can't pay my bill. I'm like, yeah, well, that is terrible. But at the same time, like, medicine's not going to really help that.
And as far as autism, do you also think it's being overdiagnosed as well?
I'm not sure that it's being overdiagnosed when the diagnosis is made by a psychiatrist. I feel like if a psychiatrist makes a diagnosis or like some type of developmental pediatrician, like, it's probably correct. I mean, it's a spectrum, right? So some people may have very mild symptoms.
So do you think there's actually more people that have it now? Because that's the whole mental health epidemic, is like all these people have autism when the previous percentage was way lower, allegedly.
I don't necessarily think that there's more people that are getting it. I think it's more diagnosing of it.
There's a wider breadth of what we can call autism nowadays.
And who's diagnosing it to make these numbers increase, though?
I think it's going to be pediatricians, probably more developmental pediatricians and psychiatrists. But yeah, I remember even like in residency, not seeing a lot of patients that had an autism diagnosis when they were pretty functional. Like, most of them were like really not functional. Like, they were pretty severe. And now we've got more of a spectrum where people with like fairly mild, fairly subtle symptoms are being diagnosed.
So like when we were growing up then, if there was somebody diagnosed with autism, it was usually pretty debilitating, correct?
Yeah, like almost like nonverbal, a lot of these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, because I remember that growing up, when you heard autism, it was somebody that wasn't really able to cope, very hard to communicate. And now, like how you guys say the spectrum, it could be a litany of things now.
Well, isn't Elon Musk autistic?
Allegedly.
he's-
If you're autistic, you do Nazi signs. That's what they say.
Well, that's why he's able to work 120 hours.
I don't believe that he really works 120 hours.
Yeah. It almost makes me wonder, like, what you call these symptoms of autism: difficulty communicating with others, difficulty coping with stressors. That also sounds like it's entirely possible that it's a societal issue.
Oh no, I think I have autism with those two things.
Yeah, me too. I think I should have been diagnosed as well when I was a kid. I couldn't even tell the teacher I needed to go to the bathroom. I had to have someone ask for me.
Did you pee yourself because of that?
I did in first grade.
Oh,
I did multiple times, the same thing.
Autism right there.
yeah. And now you're on a podcast.
No, but I don't want to laugh about it because I do believe that there are people that truly have autism. And now we're just finding this spectrum, and some people have mild symptoms when before those weren't captured.
And it's one of those things that people understand more and more over time, and people might actually get a diagnosis that they need, and then they can get the support that they need. It makes me think about how, like, there's like an explosion of people who've realized that they're lactose intolerant or that they have some kind of gluten allergy. And a lot of the reason why there's that explosion is because there's more visibility on it, and people are coming out they're like, oh, I thought that everyone felt horrible when they drank milk and ate bread.
Yeah. Almost like how Justin thinks it's normal to just like be in bed for a whole week and be super depressed.
Well, I do not think it's normal. What the hell?
Oh, that it's not pathological.
As it was happening, I was just like, this is a problem. This is bad.
Yeah, it's not.
Just don't move. You don't get out of bed. You're just like,
I get out of bed to eat and go to the bathroom, and then I go lay on the couch and maybe like sit on my phone. Get even more depressed, like reading the news. The news is real stressful right now.
Well, that's why we let it out on the pod.
Yep.
And in the chat.
So if you want to let it out, just send us a message. casadecavasospod@gmail.com. We'll hopefully get to your mailbag questions. I will say, if you do have a question for the pod, don't just send us an article and be like, what'd you think about this? Give us an actual question that we can answer and consider from the article. We want to have a dialogue with you. So if you haven't already, like, subscribe, rate us 5 stars on your platforms, tell your friends, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you later.
We'll see you next time.
on to the next.